words after committee be deleted. Mr Speaker, there is something that we've been seeing in the House from the government on a regular basis just recently, which is when they refer a very non-controversial, very non-urgent bill to a select committee, they give that select committee the power to meet at any hour of the day or night, whenever Parliament is sitting, and thereby actually short-circuit the democratic process and prevent all members of this House fully participating in it. And it's absolutely outrageous, and it has to stop. Where there is a legitimate reason for a bill to be considered in a hurry, it's absolutely legitimate to say, yes, a select committee should have the power to meet during a time when the House is sitting. When a bill is not urgent, and there is nothing at all urgent about this bill, the Customs and Excise Joint Border Management Sharing and Other Matters Amendment Bill, there is no justification for moving such a referral motion. And that is the reason, Mr Speaker, why the Labour Party will be putting forward such amendments to remove the additional parts of the referral motion, because it is an outrageous abuse of the democratic process. So, Mr Speaker, coming on to this particular bill, first of all, the first thing I want to say is I think the New Zealand Customs Service do an absolutely fantastic frontline job. We can be very proud of our Customs Service. They do great work. And as my colleague Damien O'Connor has just pointed out, they lost 54 frontline staff in the first year of this national government, despite Mr Ryle and his colleagues promising to focus resources on the front line. You don't actually get much more frontline than the people who are on our borders working for the Customs Service. We have 15,000 kilometres of coastline in New Zealand. It is a big job that the Customs Department, the Customs Service do for us, and it is vital. It is incredibly important. We rely on our clean green image in New Zealand, and the work that Customs and Biosecurity do to keep that clean green image up, to stop things getting into the country that we don't want in here. It's vital, it's very important, and it's something that I think we should fully support. Mr Speaker, this bill makes a number of amendments that I think are relatively non-controversial, and some where there will be some substantial debate. I want to talk about a few of them. The first one that I want to pick up is the exemption from paying duty to those who produce biofuels domestically, householders who produce their own biofuels. And actually I think that we have a wider issue around the production of small-scale biofuels in New Zealand, and it might not necessarily just be at the household level, might actually be at the small business level as well, where they're potentially going to be converting waste product into biofuels. So it is possible, for example, to turn used cooking oil into biofuels. There is potential for some of the byproducts from the forestry industry to be turned into biofuels. So I think we're going to need to rethink quite carefully how we handle the issues around duties for biofuels, and I hope that the committee will take some wider consideration of that issue, potentially highlighting and flagging up issues that aren't covered in this bill but that may well need to be. I went to visit some biofuels producer in Pukekohe, which I think may well be in the Minister's own electorate, about 2 weeks ago. And this small biofuels company in Pukekohe is producing, I think, about 5,000 litres of biodiesel every day using used cooking oil. It's a fantastic enterprise, but they have, of course, are now encountering issues around, potential duty and so on, or they will be. So I think it's something that we're going to need to look much more carefully about. Mr Speaker, overall, I think, as I said, it's important that we have a lot of confidence in our customs staff and those working at the borders. I want to pick up the comments made by Paul Quinn, but also by Damien O'Connor, about goods coming into the country and the duty that should be payable on those. Because I have, about 2 weeks ago, did my Main Street business canvassing in Upper Hutt, and I went into a couple of retailers, and several of them actually raised it with me, about the impact of people importing their own stuff over the internet and the impact that that's having on their businesses, on their retail businesses. The one in particular deals with model crafts, which can be reasonably high-end, high-value stuff. So we're talking about the helicopters, for example, the model helicopters that you put together. And actually, people are able to import sort of bit by bit the relevant parts that they need from offshore, and they do so in such a way that they package it all up into a series of small packages and thereby manage to get their way around paying the type of tax that the person who is retailing would have to pay were they importing those products for retail sale. So they can get them from overseas significantly cheaper over the internet. But a lot of the reason that they're significantly cheaper is the fact that they bypass all of the taxes and duties and so on. So I think that's actually an issue that's quite important if we want to have a good, vibrant, small business retail community in New Zealand. And it's particularly in some of those niche areas like model crafts and hobbies where it's actually going to be important. Well, I know we may not necessarily agree on that. It's a very novel thing, I think. We're a party of robust debate, a very broad church here in the Labour Party. I mean, Maurice Williamson doesn't need to be reminded about what a broad church political party looks like. I mean, he's still in the National Party, I think. He's even a minister in the national government. Maurice Williamson did give me a very, very good piece of advice when I first arrived in Parliament. He says, if you wish to advance in this place, never, ever, ever say what you actually think. Because apparently that doesn't get you very far in the National Party. You end up being a minister outside of Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, so I do think actually that our small business community deserve the protection of having a good, rigorous duty enforcement regime so that people can't import a whole lot of products over the internet, potentially sell them to their friends and so on, and not be caught by the relevant duties and taxes that they would otherwise have to pay. So this bill potentially, I think, strengthens the hand of those retailers, and I think that's a very good thing. Mr. Speaker, one of the other things that customs do, of course, it's the elephant in the room that nobody's wanted to mention, they check passports at the border. So customs check passports at the border. So, yeah, no, they do. So if some crazy sicko has stolen a child's identity, a dead child's identity, and applied for a passport, customs would be the type of agency that would pick that up. Customs would pick that up, I would hope. So, because that's the type of behaviour that it's absolutely despicable. There's no excuse for it. And so I think that it's good that we have a customs service that would pick up that type of behaviour, whether it happens by anybody or at any time, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, just to run through some of the other amendments that are in this bill, which of course is by and large a good bill that the Labour Party is going to be supporting. It amends the two principal acts and has quite wide-ranging provisions in three main areas of reform, and there are some other rather non-controversial minor amendments. So wide-ranging yet non-controversial, I think, seems to be the order of the day. It facilitates enhanced information sharing between border agencies. That's clearly something that we would support. And we look forward to the Select Committee having an opportunity to examine the provisions and hear from submitters about the privacy and information management issues that will inevitably flow from multi-agency cooperation. Just as an observation, in the short period of time that I've been in this House, we're seeing more of this issue coming up, the privacy considerations around the sharing of information between agencies. I think particularly as the government collects more information, as technology allows for the easier transmission and storage of information, I think this is something that the House is going to end up debating a lot more, this sharing of information between agencies. And so this bill addresses that issue. There are other issues here, or will allow customs officers to use reasonable force to remove an unauthorised person from customs areas. I can't really see how anybody would have any concern about that. Obviously, one would hope that they would be appropriately trained. Immediately before this, we were talking about private security personnel and how they would need to be appropriately trained to deal with potentially violent situations. So I would hope that the customs people who are going to be potentially removing people from customs areas would receive appropriate training in dealing with that. Customs will get direct access to a customs agent's records. Goods designed to facilitate a crime of dishonesty, such as card skimmers, will be banned from entering New Zealand. That's a good thing. It will be an offence to harm a customs dog. I don't think anybody could possibly disagree with that provision. I don't think anyone... Everybody's seen those lovely little dogs wandering around the airport. I think it would be absolutely tragic if people were allowed to harm those. Goods in multiple shipments can be classified as if they are a single shipment. That's a relatively non-controversial, simple thing. What was that? Oh, it's all right. Okay. Regulation-making powers to determine when an export entry has been made are contained in the bill. They define when an item of post has been delivered to a customs officer and so on. It makes changes to a range of fines which on the surface of it look fairly sensible to me, Mr Speaker, and the Department will no longer give an infringer the opportunity to say why they should be exempt